Hare Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Brinda Devi Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Brinda Devi Jaya Brinda Devi Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Brinda Devi Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Vrindayai Tulsi Devyai Vishnu Bhakti Pari Devi Satyavachai Namo Namaha Vrindayai Tulsi Devyai Vyayai Kesavasacha Vishnu Bhakti Pari Devi Satyavachai Namo Namaha Vinayai Tulsi Devyai Vyayai Kesavasacha Vishnu Bhakti Pari Devi Satyavachai Namo Namaha There's another one, right? Okay. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Un poquito de agua.
Sí, gracias, sí. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Muito obrigada. Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Yasodanandana Vraja Naranjana Yamuna Tirachari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Damadava Jaya Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Yasodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Nandana Vraja Janaranjana Yasodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamuna Thira Varachari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Damala Jaya Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Yasodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yasodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamuna Thira Varachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Namo Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrachacharyas His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Kunti Vaishnava Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we will be hearing what the acharyas are writing about the Canto 75, Chapter 10 of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Chapter 75, and hopefully verses 38 plus 39 and 40, which would be the end of the chapter. Hopefully we can finish this chapter. Jahasa bhimas tandrisva striyo nirpatayo pare nivaryamana apyanga ragya krishna numodita Jahasa bhimas tandrisva striyo nirpatayo pare nivaryamana apyanga ragya krishna numodita Jahasa bhimas tandrisva striyo nirpatayo pare striyo nirpatayo pare nivaryamana apyanga ragya krishna namodita. Devotees, Hasa Krishna namodita Jahasa bhimas tandrisva striyo nirpatayo pare nivaryamana apyanga ragya krishna namodita. Ladies, Jahasa bhimas tandrisva striyo nirpatayo pare nivaryamana apyanga ragya krishna namodita. Jahasa bhimas tandrisva striyo nirpatayo pare nivaryamana apyanga ragya krishna namodita. Synonyms: Jahasa, laughed; Bhima, Bhima; Tam, him; Drishva, seeing; Strijaha, the women; Nirpatayaha, kings; Apare, and others; Nivaryamanaha, being checked; Api, even though; Anga, my dear Parikshit; Ragya, by the king Yudhisthira; Krishna, by Lord Krishna; Anumoditaha, approved. Translation: My dear Parikshit, Bhima loved to see this, and so did the women, kings, and others. King Yudhisthira tried to stop them, but Lord Krishna showed his approval. Please repeat. My dear Parikshit, Bhima loved to see this, and so did the women, kings, and others. King Yudhisthira tried to stop them, but Lord Krishna showed his approval. Purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti mentions that King Yudhisthira tried to check the laughter by glancing at the women and Bhima. Lord Krishna, however, gave approval with a gesture of his eyebrows. The Lord had come to the earth to remove the burden of wicked kings, and this incident was not unrelated to the Lord's purpose. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes, the women also laughed. Yudhishthira, by his glance, told everyone not to laugh. However, Krishna, by a movement of his eyebrow, permitted it. So what could be done? By this he sowed the seed of dissension, desiring to rid the earth of its burden. Of course, just by his glance he can bewilder Duryodhana, but he used Maya Danava's Maya as a tool for this. And Srila Jiva Goswami writes, with downcast head, Duryodhana left. People cried out because they worried about some mischief, since Duryodhana was most evil. Yudhishthira, being without an enemy, was somewhat saddened because of his natural compassion. The Lord was silent because his desire was fulfilled. That desire is mentioned. He wanted to remove the burden of the earth. Instead of Samujihirshri, sometimes Jijirshur Uchahi is seen, but this is not accepted by Sridhar Swami. Magyanatimirandasya Gananjana Sadakaya Chakshuru Militanjana Tasmai Shuraved Maham Shuchitanya Manovistam Stapitanjana Putale Swayam Rupakada Mahya Dadati Swapantikam. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Vando Jagadpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishavana Sutedevi Pranamami Haripriya Vancha Kalpataruvyascha Kripa Sindhudevacha Vaitanam Pavanevyo Vaishnavevyo Namo Namaha Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Everybody, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. With your good wishes and blessings, may this class be something that is of some practical use for everyone here and those who are watching online. So this is a conversation between Parikshit Maharaj and Shukadeva Goswami, and at the very end, the very last verse of this chapter will show how all the questions that Parikshit Maharaj were answered actually was one main question about why Duryodhana was so angry and so upset. So we'll continue with these three verses. Hopefully we can finish it. There is a section that is being presented in the translation of the Mahabharata by Krishna Dharma, and explains further what is being presented, has been presented in class so far with further detail. So I'm going to read that. This is chapter 18, and the title is Duryodhana's Envy. Duryodhana had also decided to stay on for a while in Indraprastha with Shakuni. Bad combination. Shakuni was there. The prince burned from envy of the Pandavas' success. They had far exceeded him in their power and influence. It was the Pandavas had exceeded him in their power and influence. Duryodhana could not stand the fact that Yudhishthira was now the emperor of the world, a position he felt should belong to him. He gazed with astonishment at the unlimited wealth piled in Yudhishthira's treasury. The Kauravas had never seen such opulence. And it's interesting because when, as an act of great charity, the Kauravas decided to give part of their land to the Pandavas, they gave them a very desolate part, very barren terrain. And from this terrain, Mayadavana built this amazing palace, and everything was cultivated and with gardens and flowers and trees. It became a paradise. The Maya Sabha especially intrigued Duryodhana, that's the name of this palace, as he wanted to take a closer look. Thus he and Shakuni examined the hall. That's the name of the hall. The Kaurava saw celestial designs that he had never seen anywhere else. He was amazed by the workmanship and splendor of the palace. Everything about this Rajasuya sacrifice and this palace was absolutely splendid. There was nothing but absolute splendor. It was as if he had gone to the heavenly planets. Bright gems sparkled on all sides of the spacious hall, and Duryodhana could feel a cool breeze that carried a mixture of celestial fragrances. Ivory and gold seats stood by the side of lotus-filled lakes. The walls were inlaid with exquisite carvings depicting the gods and their consorts. Duryodhana slowly made his way through the hall, his many golden ornaments jangling together as he walked. We saw yesterday how he was very proud of his beautiful crown and his beautiful sword, I believe it was, and he wanted to show them off. So now he's walking, trying to show off his opulence in the form of his crown and his sword. As he saw Maya's intricate and wonderful workmanship, he became even more jealous. He snapped angrily at the palace servants walking in front of him. With his golden helmeted head held high, he walked casually, trying not to show any signs of being impressed. So that's what happens when we're envious. We don't say, oh, this is so wonderful, or you speak so well, or your residence is so beautiful. We just become totally neutral. So we're not showing that really inside we're jealous and very impressed. Gradually, Duryodhana came to the large crystal pond at the center of the palace. The water was perfectly clear and still. At first glance, it appeared to be a continuation of the marble floor leading up to it. And Duryodhana made that mistake. Fully clothed and with his eyes wide open, he walked straight into the water. The Pandavas were standing on a golden balcony above the pond. Seeing Duryodhana falling in with his arms and legs akimbo, Bhima laughed aloud. Some of the Krishna's queens were also present, and they too laughed, and Draupadi was one of them. The Kaurava prince hauled himself out of the lake, helped by Shakuni. He did not even look at the Pandavas or Krishna and his queens. Their laughter was unbearable. Yudhishthira saw Duryodhana's embarrassment and told his brothers not to laugh. Krishna smiled but said nothing as Yudhishthira arranged for dry clothes to be brought and offered to the angry prince. Duryodhana quickly put them on and continued his tour, trying hard to conceal his feelings. Everything, I imagine there was a combination of very contrary feelings: impressed, amazed, angry, jealous. Everything was intolerable to him. The magnificence of the palace, the incomparable beauty of the queens who moved about within it, and particularly Draupadi. Duryodhana was still fuming from his failure to win the Panchala princess. She was a jewel among women. She too had laughed when he had fallen into the lake. In the Krishna book, Srila Prabhupada explains that everybody was laughing. The princes, the kings, the queens, everybody who saw this incident was laughing heartily. And Yudhishthira was trying to appease them and kind of tell them, don't laugh, this is very humiliating. But Krishna was very composed and didn't show any emotion toward or against this laughter. The Kaurava ground his teeth in agony. As he rounded a bend, he again fell victim to the deceptive designs of the palace. The door had been fashioned in such a way as to appear open when it was actually closed. Not realizing this, Duryodhana walked straight into it, recoiling in pain as his helmeted head crashed against the clear crystal. The stunned prince then avoided another door because he thought it was closed when it was actually open. That means mistake after mistake after mistake. And everybody was watching, and everybody was laughing. The palace attendants were struggling to restrain their laughter. Humiliated and angry, the prince stormed out. Yudhishthira felt sorry to see Duryodhana's pain. He tried to console him in various ways, but Duryodhana just laughed, striving to hide his actual feelings. He bade the Pandavas farewell and left for Hastinapur, followed by his large retinue, his mind bent upon revenge. Then Krishna decided to return home. As he was departing, he spoke affectionately to Yudhishthira. He said, "O king, cherish all your subjects with ceaseless vigilance and patience. As the cloud is to all creatures, or the large tree to the birds, so should you become the refuge to your dependents." After Krishna's departure, the Pandavas approached Vyasadeva, who had not yet left. Yudhishthira asked him if the sacrifice had been successful. The rishi replied, "Oh, Kuru child, this sacrifice will yield great results for 13 years. You shall be the undisputed emperor of this white earth, but at the end of that period, you will be the cause of a war which will rid the world of Kshatriyas." Yudhishthira was alarmed. Seeing his expression, Vyasadeva said, "Do not be aggrieved. No man can overcome the influence of time. Everything is arranged by the Supreme for the ultimate goal, for the ultimate good of all. This war will be Duryodhana's fault, not yours. I shall now go to the mountains, but you will see me again in times of need." And that was Vyasadeva speaking. The rishi then stood up and left, surrounded by all the other sages. When they were gone, Yudhishthira spoke to his brothers, and he said, "The sages' words cannot prove false, but I do not wish to be the cause of suffering in the world. From this day on, I shall not speak a harsh word to anyone. I shall always practice virtue and shall see no difference between my own sons and those of others, and I shall follow my elders' commands without the least hesitation. In this way, I shall avoid disagreements, for they are the cause of war." So these are the instructions of Yudhishthira to all of us. He says, "I do not wish to be the cause of suffering in the world." We can appropriate these lessons and we can actually start practicing these lessons. "From this day on, I shall not speak a harsh word to anyone." How harsh words are so painful, and we need to avoid that. "I shall always practice virtue and shall see no difference between my own sons and those of others, and I shall follow my elders' commands without the least hesitation." These are instructions for all of us. So when we read these books, when we read the Bhagavatam, when we read the Mahabharata, there's nothing but stories about supreme personalities of servitorship who are the very, 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 very dear servants of the Supreme Lord. One thing is to glorify the Lord, but when one glorifies his perfect devotees, his pure devotees, servants of the Supreme Lord, the Lord becomes even happier, even more and more satisfied. So this is what the Srimad Bhagavatam is doing. It's glorifying the Lord, and it's glorifying and exemplifying the lives of his pure devotees and what it is that we need to gather and learn from them, and what it is to put that into practice. So in the verse for today, verse number 38, I'll go back to the verse number 38. Something that was very attractive is Yudhisthira, being without an enemy, was somewhat saddened because of his natural compassion. So this is antithesis of the personality of Duryodhana. Duryodhana was cruel, he was envious, he was angry. He was not a very good example. He was a good example in the sense that we can learn from negative examples what not to do. But Yudhisthira was very compassionate, and even though he had the reason to be angry and to be disgusted at the behavior of his cousin Duryodhana, he felt compassion. He felt compassion because everybody was laughing at Duryodhana's. And everybody was laughing and ridiculing him, and he felt like they should be quiet. They should not start laughing or continue to laugh out of consideration for Duryodhana's feelings and his apparent and very clear humiliation. So I decided to talk a little bit about Yudhisthira's qualities, and here's what it is. Because we can learn from a negative example, but we also especially learn from positive examples. So let's examine King Yudhisthira and his beautiful, beautiful qualities. He is described to be Ajata Satru, one who has no enemies, because he had a very gentle and fair and just attitude and nature, that he had no enemies. And even his enemies, his adversaries, respected his saintly demeanor. He was a saintly personality. He was the personification of Dharma, because he is mentioned as the emblem of the ultimate emblem of morality, truth, and duty. In spite of facing tremendous adversity and injustice, he never compromised his behavior and his adherence to truth. That brings it to our own level, that in spite of difficulties and problems, we need to learn to act always in a way that is pleasing to the Supreme Lord. When we speak, is this speech of mine, are these words pleasing to the Supreme Lord? Is this behavior pleasing to the Supreme Lord? That is the thermometer that measures how we need to act, how we need to speak, how we need to behave. Is this pleasing to the Supreme Lord? It's a very easy method. And if there is, for example, I mentioned the other day about action and reaction, we can choose to act and especially to react to things that are not very pleasant. They are kind of provocative, by thinking for a split second, how am I going to react? Is this reaction of mine something that is going to be injurious, or is it going to be something pleasing to the Supreme Lord? Very simple. It's a very simple method. So we just have to be aware that we can actually stop for a split second, meditate on it, and make our reaction, our response, an offering to the Supreme Lord. So the person or the situation gets benefited by the proper reaction, and we benefit by the proper action and the proper response. He is also the ideal king and devotee. He is the perfect representative of Lord Krishna to rule the earth. Unlike a common materialistic ruler, he is considered a saintly king who centered his reign on devotion and the welfare of his subjects. This is another lesson. Everything that the devotee does, ideally, should be an act of devotion everything, an act of devotion to the Supreme Lord. And he exhibits immense amount of humility, internal humility. Though he was an exalted emperor, he was fundamentally a servant of Krishna, acknowledging his supremacy during the execution of the Rajasuya sacrifice. So whenever at the beginning of the Rajasuya sacrifice they were looking for the person who would be the first person to receive the offerings and the worship, and people were debating. Shishupal was on one side, the Panda was on the other side, and Nakula presented Lord Krishna as the fit person to be worshipped. And so Krishna was the person that eventually got worshipped at the beginning of the Rajasuya sacrifice by the choice of the side of his devotees against the arguments of Shishupal, who said, oh, he's not even a Kshatriya, he's just a Vaishya, he's a cowherd boy. His family origins are unknown, he's not qualified, he's a pretender. But anyways, the side of the Panda was won, which is for the majority of the kings present. Kings from all over the world were present at the Rajasuya sacrifice. And so he received the worship of the Rajasuya sacrifice because King Yudhishthira's sacrifice was mainly intended to glorify the Supreme Lord. So that was the purpose of the sacrifice, not to show his opulence, not to show his power, not to show his independence, but to show the glory of the Supreme Lord. And that's another lesson for us. Whatever has been done is to show the glory of the Supreme Lord. We cannot make a mistake if we have that mentality. We can try our best, and by practice, eventually it will be so ingrained that we don't even need to think how to respond. It will be an automatic, positive, devotional response. And Yudhishthira also, he's capable of compassion. He had big capacity to be compassionate. His deeply affectionate nature meant that he was capable of profound grief when he witnessed the suffering and loss of his loved ones. But he also was compassionate toward Duryodhana when he saw that everybody was laughing at him. And Duryodhana felt extremely humiliated. In the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, Maharaj Yudhishthira's conversations about Dharma are highlighted as profound master classes in both material ethics, Varnashram Dharma, and eternal spiritual truth, Sanatan Dharma. As the literal son of Dharmaraj, Yamaraj, his dialogues serve to clarify the path of righteousness for all of humanity. And there are so many quotes here. The three most prominent conversations involving Maharaj Yudhishthira and Dharma that are found in the Vedic literatures include: 1. Inquiring from Narada Muni on Sanatan Dharma. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Maharaj Yudhishthira asks the great sage Narada Muni about the principles of religion by which a human being can attain the ultimate goal of life. So we can always revisit this chapter and revisit the conversation between the questions posed by Maharaj Yudhishthira and Narada Muni being there to answer those questions. Narada Muni explains the specific duties of the different social and spiritual orders. Crucially, the conversation concludes that the soul's ultimate, eternal occupational duty is pure devotional service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. And we know that, maybe theoretical knowledge, maybe not so realized, but we can always proceed on the path of bhakti, understanding that eventually all of these things that we are dedicating our life to will become realized knowledge. Because we've had experiences, maybe very tiny, very small, but we know the things that were a cause of reasoning have become automatically understood, and that is by the grace of the Supreme Lord. Another conversation that he had King Yudhishthira was the dialogue with Yaksha Prashna, which was Yamaraj himself. While in exile in the forest, Yudhishthira faces a series of riddle-like questions about Dharma from a mysterious nature spirit, a Yaksha, who is actually his father. And here he's going to be given instructions. The ultimate wonder, what is the ultimate wonder? When asked what the most wonderful thing in the world is, Yudhishthira famously responds that though thousands of living entities die every day, foolish men think themselves that foolish men think that they themselves are immortal and fail to prepare for death. We have the big advantage of having death in front of our eyes. We see so many devotees living. And we have the opportunity, that with the time we have left, to prepare ourselves for the ultimate test, which is how to leave the body. So all of this is the mercy of the Supreme Lord, who is giving us the capacity to understand, and more than understand, to therefore to act in a way that is building up our connection with the Supreme Lord, so that at the time of death we can go to a better situation. And because everybody in this room and everybody who is hearing is of the same kind, we are very fortunate that death is not something that scares one, that scares us, that we deny, but actually that we accept as a gift to be able to practice the process of devotional service with great intensity and great depth. That's our choice, of course. And defining a Brahmana, Yudhishthira explicitly that's part of the conversation. Yudhishthira explicitly states that a person is not a Brahmana simply by birth or academic learning. Rather, it is behavior that establishes one's true spiritual standing. This is found in all the Shastras. In choosing Nakula, another point that was very interesting here is that when he could revive somebody, given the boon to revive only one deceased person, in this case one deceased brother, Yudhishthira chooses his stepbrother Nakula over his biological brothers Bhima and Arjuna. He explains that because he wants both of his father's wives, Kunti and Madri, to have a surviving son, he must act out of pure dharma. And he utters the famous maxim, quote, "He who destroys dharma, dharma destroys him. He who protects dharma, dharma also protects him." And the last conversation is his conversation, or his taking instruction by Bhishmadev on the bed of arrows at the end of the war. Following the devastation of the Kurukshetra war, Yudhishthira is overwhelmed with grief and guilt over the loss of life. Lord Krishna leads him to the dying patriarch, Bhishmadev, to receive instructions on kingship and morality. The lesson: Bhishmadev systematically instructs Yudhishthira on the duties of a king, Raja Dharma, on charity, liberation, and women. This conversation highlights how material dharma must ultimately be executed as a matter of duty to please the Supreme Lord, rather than for personal or material enjoyment. So this dharma must ultimately be executed as an act of sacrifice. An act of sacrifice means not penance, but make it the activity sacred. That's from the Latin, sacrum facere. So the word sacrifice means to make our existence an act of offering to the Supreme Lord. So I'm going to stop here and see if anybody has any comments or questions. We have 1 or 2 minutes left. There is plenty, but the compassion of Yudhishthira is a great example for us to follow in the face of very difficult situations for us or for somebody else, a situation we're witnessing, where somebody's being run over by calamity, by insults, etc. All glories to the present devotees in the temple, all glories for those who are watching, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Jai Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hare Krishna, thank you very much. Yeah, I wasn't able to finish the verses, so tomorrow will be the last two verses, 39 and 40. Oh yeah, Amarendra. So we have the presence of Amarendra, who is going to present the end of the chapter. So it's an act of mercy from the Supreme Lord that this chapter was not finished today. Hare Krishna.
Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Varhavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandar Agom Vidamaniya Vishesha Shobham Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasa Sakale Priya Priti Manti Vasyanti Panti Kayanti Giram Naganti Ananda Maya Sadhu Jala
Yasomatinandana Brajo Baronagara Gokularam Jana Kana Gopi Paranadana Madana Manohara Gopi Parananda Gopi Paranadana Madana Manohara